Welcome back, and we're going to take a look at the topic cryptography today. Cryptography comes from two Greek words and refers to the art of secret writing. Cryptography also means encryption, including the securing of messages, email messages, authentication, creating digital signatures, including for legal documents, blockchain, and other apps. Within the InfoSec industry, we may need to create policies for cryptographic use if our organizations actually use cryptography. We need to include in those policies common key management approaches and the requirements for the security of our crypto assets. We may invest in a public key infrastructure or rely on an external one, which supports the creation and the storage and distribution of digital certificates and public encryption keys. We'll be referring to all of these later in the slides. A public key infrastructure enables users on PCs to securely exchange data over networks whilst verifying the identity of the public key holder. So it's essential that we actually trust who we're sharing information with. Within our cryptography policy, we'll have sections that include the selection of the crypto system, what criteria are we using to actually select the crypto system, and the software, the crypto software. How frequently will we be changing our keys? How are we going to securely send our keys and also store them? We'll be considering in our policy the requirement to encrypt our data and information assets at rest whilst in storage on files or on our hard drives, in backups or in archives. There may be a regulatory requirement to actually encrypt our data at rest and in transit on our network, through our VPNs, through our virtual private networks, which we'll be referring to later. We may be required to encrypt our data on our USB sticks. We'll also be conducting within our policy a risk analysis in terms of our corporate data. What is the risk if we don't encrypt our data? Are we obliged to encrypt all of our data or some of our data? Sensitive data, personal data, intellectual property? So these are questions that we'd be answering or seeking to answer within our cryptography policy. Cryptanalysis is the study of the principles and methods of transforming a scrambled or encrypted message back into an unencrypted message without the knowledge of the key. It's also referred to as code breaking, and professionals who actually practice cryptanalysis are known as cryptanalysts. Very brilliant people, but I'm not a cryptanalyst. What industries use cryptography? Well, we have the military, we have the banking and finance sector, we have the e-commerce sector, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, the entire blockchain system uses cryptography. Is heavily dependent on cryptography. Social services, governments, and nowadays with the increased level of cybercrime, cryptography is a real critical tool to ensure that we comply with privacy regulations, the GDPR, the UK Data Protection Act, and other global standards with regards to information security. So what is encryption or cryptography? That is the practice of scrambling and encoding the contents of a message so that the contents are hidden from those who don't need to know the contents of the message. If you take a look at your Zoom passcode, if you've ever received a Zoom invitation, if you take a look at the message, it will say you're invited to a meeting XYZ, blah, 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 and then it has a Zoom passcode. But if you take a look further on in the message, you may see a text that says PWD equals, and then it's got this long scrambled text. That is simply your passcode from this slide, 81509, that has actually been encrypted, scrambled. So make sure you check your next Zoom invitation link to view the encrypted passcode. The process of retrieving the original plaintext from the ciphertext is called decryption. And when you're encrypting data and decrypting data, the software and systems usually make use of a key. And just as a padlock can only be unlocked using the correct combination of numbers, decryption can only be performed by the correct key. And a key is simply a number of random characters used by encryption algorithms to convert plain text to ciphertext, as we've seen here above here. So it's just a number of random characters. You're not actually receiving a physical key to encrypt and then decrypt your data. It's just a system and software that is used to actually encrypt and scramble the contents of a message so that the content is hidden from those that don't have a need to know what the message actually bears. What are the benefits of encryption? Confidentiality, including data at rest and in motion, in transit. Integrity. With encryption, we can identify when a message has been altered without authorization. Authentication. We can verify the identity of the sender of a message, and non-repudiation, whereby once the sender of a message has digitally signed their message, they cannot say, I did not send that message. That's what's referred to as non-repudiation. Let's take a look at some use cases of encryption. So the ladder back down sends a message to Black and Scott, but a man in the middle or a cyber criminal intercepts the file to try and read the message. What can cryptography do for us? Well, it enables the ladder back down to encrypt plain text into ciphertext using a key which can then only be decrypted and read by Black and Scott with a corresponding key. So that ensures confidentiality. And we'll talk about all these keys as we progress. Another use case, the ladder back down sends a file to Black and Scott, but a man in the middle intercepts and alters the message and then forwards it to Black and Scott. Well, with cryptography, Black and Scott can verify that the document has not been tampered with by a man in the middle en route, because the software can check the message header to see whether that has changed from the original message header or the stamp that was applied to the message when it was encrypted by the ladder back down. Another use case, XYZ, the cyber criminal, may transmit a file to Black and Scott claiming it was sent by the ladder back down. With cryptography or encryption, we can actually verify, so Black and Scott can verify the authenticity of the sender of the message. That is, if the message was truly sent by the ladder back down or not. Whereas if the message was truly sent by the ladder back down, we can't claim that we did not send the message. That's what's referred to as non-repudiation. Let's take a brief look at the history of cryptography. There was first the Caesar cipher. Skytel, Wigner, we'll take a look at that, Vernon, an Enigma machine. That may sound familiar to some of us. And the purple machine. Let's take a brief look. With the Caesar cipher, uses a simple substitution method, such as shifting each character 3 spaces. So A may become D, B would then become E, C would become F, etc. So when spelling Abigail, if the contents of a message were to read Abigail, that would encrypt as in D-E-L, J-D-L-O, because each character is shifted by 3 spaces. With substitution ciphers, they are subject to pattern analysis. That is one issue, because if a cyber criminal or cryptanalyst were to actually identify the most common word in the dictionary, which is, or the most common letter, first of all, which is E. Once they've identified all the E's, the most common word actually is the, T-H-E. Once they first identify E, they may then find it easy to just go and find all the the's in a message. And once they found all the the's, then they now find any words that contain the letter E or H or T. So they are subject to pattern analysis. That is a risk if you're using the Caesar cipher. Skytel cipher. This was used by the Spartans to send messages to field generals. But we can read up on this if we're interested at all. Here's another cipher. And that substitutes alphabet letters by shifting plain text characters up or down. Keyword is agreed upon ahead of time, and the first letter of the key is matched up against the first letter of the message. So this is another encryption tool. Vernon cipher. This is the most secure of all because this is just used one time. It's a one-time key or one-time pad. The keypad or the key is statistically random. So here, the word hello is converted by the key. Here's the key that is actually encrypted and it's here. And then we've now got the cipher text, which is here. The key should be used only once and should be at least as long as the message. So this message has 5 characters. The key is as long as the message, but it could be longer, but it's got 5 characters. Hello, 5 characters, and then the key AXHJB has 5 characters, a one-time pad. only used once, and that's what makes it secure. Then we've got the Enigma machine and the purple machine used in World War II. And the cryptanalysts that actually broke the cryptography or the encryption code behind this were actually credited with reducing the length of World War II. Here are two different encryption algorithms, although some technologies, such as blockchain, use a hybrid encryption algorithm. They use both symmetric and asymmetric encryption. With symmetric encryption, and we'll take a look at this further, it's faster than asymmetric encryption because it uses a single key which is shared. You can use it to encrypt a volume or logical drive, and it only provides confidentiality. But one of the issues, of course, is because the key is shared with the message, the encryption key is shared with the message, if a cyber criminal or a hacker actually intercepts the message, they've got the key to then decrypt it as well. So it only provides confidentiality in as much as it is not intercepted. Asymmetric encryption uses a public key and a private key pair. So it's got two separate keys, public key and a private key. Provides authentication. It authenticates the sender of the message or authenticates the owner of a website, as we will see shortly. So provides authentication, provides integrity, because the public key and the private key have to match. If both keys don't match, then the message will not be read. The message will not be decrypted. Provides non-repudiation. It's much slower, however, because the encryption process also has to be reversed. So plain text has to be encrypted, and then that same text becomes ciphertext, which then has to be decrypted by the recipient software at the recipient's end. That's why it's much slower. So as I've said, with symmetric encryption, we've got a shared secret key that goes with the message. Longer keys are stronger. It can encrypt in bulk and it's fast to encrypt and decrypt. But the key issue is that with the key being distributed with the message, it is susceptible to man-in-the-middle attacks, where a man in the middle can intercept the message and simply read the message because they've also got hold of the encryption key. Here are some symmetric key algorithms: DES, triple DES, blowfish, idea, cars, RC4, RC5, twofish. We won't talk through all of them. With symmetric encryption, we've got stream encryption, which encrypts one character, one bit, one byte at a time. And it's also decrypted in real time. Used to encrypt speech by mobiles. Also used in internet e-commerce. We've also got block encryption, which encrypts a block of characters at a time. Here are some block encryption solutions: RC4, DES, triple DES, AES.